Hello guys, welcome to my channel where stories filled with revenge, moral lessons and love are told. Sit back, relax, and don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you never miss a story like this again. It started with a bank notification I almost ignored. I was half asleep on the couch that Sunday morning, the curtains still drawn against the light, scrolling lazily through my phone. Then I saw it 12:043:75 posted to your credit card. My thumb froze mid-scroll. My eyes darted back to the numbers, reading them twice, then again, as if they would shrink into something more reasonable. They didn't. My chest tightened, and my fingers went cold. I wasn't expecting any big charges. In fact, I've been deliberately keeping expenses light after our recent family trip to Miami. I opened the details. The charge was from the rental platform we had used for our Airbnb, but the address was different. Not the modest beachfront house I had booked weeks earlier for us all. This one was a luxury villa in Coconut Grove, with a pool big enough to host a small wedding and a list of amenities that sounded like something out of a celebrity travel blog. Private chef, rooftop jacuzzi, concierge service. My brain tripped over itself trying to figure out how my name was attached to it. The only person who had access to my card information besides me was my younger sister, Sarah. She had borrowed it a couple of times in the past for emergencies, or what she called emergencies, like when she needed to replace a flat tire or hold herself over until payday. I'd been foolish enough to trust her, but this was beyond imagination. I called her immediately. The phone rang 4 times before she picked up, her voice thick with the smug satisfaction of someone who had just had a perfect weekend. "Hey," she sang, like I was calling to gush over our trip. "Sarah, did you upgrade our Airbnb?" I asked, my voice already trembling. "Oh, that?" she said, like it was a minor detail. "Yeah, the original place was nice and all, but it didn't really fit the vibe, you know? I wanted us to have the full experience. Everyone loved it, didn't they? You charged $12,000 to my card without telling me," I said slowly, every syllable heavy. She laughed. "Don't ruin the vibe, sis. It's family. We all had fun. And besides, you earn more than me. You can handle it." Something hot and electric shot through me, not just anger, but betrayal so sharp it almost hurt to breathe. I didn't care about vibes, I cared about respect, about boundaries that Zara had never once acknowledged. This wasn't an innocent mistake. This was a decision she made without my consent, fully expecting me to foot the bill. When I told our parents later that day, my father barely looked up from the newspaper. "She just wanted everyone to enjoy themselves," he muttered, like that was justification enough. My mother's reaction was worse. She sighed, put her hand on mine and said, "Don't make this a big deal. You've always been the responsible one. You can help her out just this once." "Just this once?" My voice cracked. "Do you realize how many times she's done this? How many thousands of dollars have I covered over the years?" My mother's eyes hardened. "She's your sister. Family looks out for each other." That was the phrase I'd been hearing since I was a teenager. Family looks out for each other. But in our family, that meant I was the safety net. I was the one expected to clean up Zara's messes, pay her debts, and stay silent while she enjoyed the perks. The difference this time was the number. $12,000 wasn't something I could just shrug off. I replayed the trip in my head, noticing things I had brushed aside at the time. Zara handing champagne glasses to our cousins like a hostess at a high-end resort, her bragging about the private chef's dinner to her friends on Instagram, the way everyone avoided looking at me when the final bill came up in conversation. I realized then they all probably knew she had used my card, and not one person thought to warn me. The first night after discovering the charge, I barely slept. I kept refreshing my banking app, half hoping it was some kind of glitch. But by morning, it had settled permanently, undeniably. My stomach churned as I imagined the months it would take to pay off, the interest that would pile up, the vacations I'd have to skip, the savings I'd have to dip into. All for a villa I hadn't even agreed to. That day at work, I could barely focus. My emails went unanswered. My coffee went cold. My mind kept drifting to a memory from 5 years earlier when Zara had convinced me to co-sign a lease for her apartment. She promised she'd handle the rent. 6 months in, she stopped paying, and I ended up covering the remainder of the year just to protect my credit score. She never apologized. My parents said, "Well, you knew she was young and figuring things out." Zara wasn't young anymore. She was 31, fully capable of managing her own life if she wanted to. But she didn't want to. Why would she, when she had me to fall back on? By midweek, I decided I wasn't going to let this slide. I sent her a text, keeping it as neutral as I could. "We need to talk about the Airbnb charge. You need to pay me back." She replied with a laughing emoji and chill, "I'll sort it out when I can." That was the moment something in me clicked. When I can in Zara's language means never. I stopped answering her calls. I stopped engaging with the family group chat where she posted photos from the trip with captions like "best vacation ever, all thanks to my amazing sister." My mother texted me privately, urging me to keep the peace. I started to feel like I was the villain in my own family for wanting my money back. One night, while scrolling through my phone, I stumbled upon a tagged photo of Zara at a rooftop bar, holding a drink that probably cost more than my weekly groceries. She was wearing a new designer dress. The caption read, "Living my best life." My jaw tightened. It wasn't that she couldn't pay me back, it was that she wouldn't. I began gathering every piece of evidence I could. The bank statement, the booking confirmation for the villa, screenshots of her Instagram posts bragging about the place. I knew that if I confronted her again without something concrete, she'd twist the story, make me look like the unreasonable one. The following weekend, my cousin Maya stopped by my apartment. She hesitated before speaking, but eventually admitted she'd known Zara had used my card. "She told us you'd offered to cover the upgrade," Maya said softly, guilt clouding her eyes. "I thought you were cool with it." I laughed, bitter and sharp. Of course she said that. That conversation confirmed what I already suspected. Zara was spinning her own version of events, one where I was the generous big sister who had happily bankrolled everyone's fun. And the worst part, people believed her. That Sunday night, I sat at my desk, looking at the neat little folder I had compiled every shred of proof in one place. I realized then that this wasn't just about $12,000. It was about every time I'd been taken advantage of, every time my boundaries had been bulldozed under the banner of family. I wasn't going to be the safety net anymore. I closed the folder and stared out the window at the city lights. The noise of traffic rose from the street below, mingling with the faint sound of music from a bar across the road. It was the sound of life moving forward, and I decided I was going to move forward too, just not in the way my family expected. The first step was simple. Stop playing the role they had written for me. The next step would be harder. It would mean shaking the foundation of how my family operated. But as I sat there, the weight of years lifting slightly off my shoulders, I knew I was ready. The morning I decided to involve a lawyer, the air outside was damp with early rain, and the streets had that washed, silver look that always made me feel like something new could begin. I knew this wouldn't be a clean or easy beginning, but it would be one I controlled. I didn't choose a lawyer from the family's network. That would have been suicide. Word would have gotten back to my parents in hours. Instead, I found someone through a colleague at work, a quiet but sharp woman named Helena Cruz who specialized in personal financial disputes. She had this calm, assessing way of looking at me while I spoke, like she was measuring not just the facts but the weight they carried. I told her everything: the unauthorized charge, the history of loans that were never repaid, the lease disaster, even the way my family dismissed my anger as unnecessary drama. When I finished, she tapped her pen against a legal pad. "You've been enabling this behavior for years," she said without judgment, just stating a fact. "If you want repayment, we'll make it official. But you should also be prepared for fallout. Families don't like it when you stop playing your assigned role." I knew that already. The backlash had started the moment I refused to return Zara's calls, but hearing it put so plainly made me sit straighter. "I'm ready," I said, even though part of me wasn't sure I was. Helena's plan was straightforward. First, a formal demand letter with a detailed account of the charge, proof it was unauthorized, and a clear repayment deadline. If Zara ignored it, we'd move forward with a small claims suit. She warned me that this wasn't about emotional satisfaction. The legal system wouldn't punish her for bad sisterhood. This was purely about getting my money back. Still, the act of drafting that letter felt like reclaiming something I'd lost. When Helena sent me the final copy for approval, I read it twice, savoring every line. This matter must be resolved. To avoid further legal action, it was cold, clinical, and perfect. The letter went out on a Wednesday. By Friday night, my phone was buzzing with texts from my mother. Why are you threatening your own sister? Do you know how this makes us look? She's humiliated. I didn't answer. I knew if I engaged, I'd be dragged back into that endless cycle of justification and guilt. Instead, I watched the reactions from a distance. My cousin sent me a screenshot from Zara's Instagram, a picture of her in a coffee shop captioned, "Some people only care about money. Blood means nothing to them." The comments were flooded with her friends offering sympathy, painting her as the victim. It was almost impressive how quickly she could spin a story. Helena advised me not to respond publicly. Silence is power. Here, she said, don't feed the narrative she's building. Just keep your records straight. But silence came at a cost. At the next Sunday dinner, which I didn't attend, my father apparently told the whole table that I'd lost perspective. My aunt texted me afterward, saying she was worried about my mental state. I realized then that Zara wasn't the only one who thrived on my compliance. My whole family did. Me setting boundaries was a disruption they weren't prepared to accept. I kept remembering a conversation from years ago when Zara had totaled her car while driving without insurance. My parents asked me to give her a short-term loan to help buy a replacement. I was 26 then, barely scraping by myself, but I agreed. Zara promised she'd repay me within 6 months. It took 3 years, and only because I practically begged for installments. Back then, I thought it was just a one-off burden. Now I see it as part of the pattern. The difference this time was that I wasn't giving her years. The deadline in the letter was firm 30 days. Halfway through that month, Zara finally called. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity got the better of me. Her voice was brittle, not the syrupy tone she used when she wanted something. You didn't have to do this, she said. You didn't have to take $12,000 from me. I replied, it's not like you're broke. She snapped. You've always had more than me. This isn't about who has more. I said, my voice low. It's about respect. And you've never respected my boundaries, she scoffed. Wow, so this is who you are now. Cold, heartless, over money. I hung up before I could say something I'd regret. My hands shook for a few minutes afterward, but not from guilt, from relief. I had finally stopped letting her define the conversation. In the weeks that followed, I learned just how deep the enabling went. My uncle called to mediate, which really meant convincing me to drop it for the sake of family unity. A childhood friend messaged me to say Zara had told her I was cutting her off during a hard time. Even my grandmother, who rarely got involved in disputes, phoned to remind me that sisters are forever. I realized then that in my family's unspoken rulebook, loyalty was measured by how much you were willing to lose for someone else. By that logic, I had been the most loyal one for years and also the most exploited. The night before the deadline expired, I got an email from Helena. Zara's response had arrived. It wasn't payment. It was a letter from some budget law firm, claiming that the charge was a shared expense and that I had implicitly consented by participating in the trip. I almost laughed. Implicit consent? Because I slept in a bed in the house she booked without my permission? Helena wasn't amused. This is a bluff, she said. They have nothing concrete, but it means she's not paying voluntarily. We'll move forward. That was the moment I knew there was no going back. The bridge between us wasn't just burned, it was reduced to ash. I thought I would feel sadder about it, but instead I felt lighter, like all those years of carrying Zara's weight were finally coming off my shoulders. When the small claims filing was submitted, I didn't announce it to the family. I didn't post about it. I just kept living my life, going to work, meeting friends for coffee, taking quiet walks in the evenings. But in the background, I was preparing for the inevitable storm. I knew Zara wouldn't let this end in a courtroom without trying to poison the well first. She was a master of preemptive damage control. All she needed was one carefully staged gathering to turn the narrative completely in her favor. I decided that if she wanted to play to an audience, I'd be there with the truth. And so, when I got the group message about a casual family get-together at my parents' house, I didn't decline like I usually would. I marked the date in my calendar, closed my laptop, and began thinking about what I would say when the moment came. It wouldn't be about yelling. It wouldn't be about humiliating her in front of everyone. It would be about drawing the line so clearly that no one could pretend they didn't see it. The day of the gathering, the air was heavy with late summer heat, and my parents' backyard smelled faintly of grilled chicken and overripe fruit. I arrived deliberately late, so I wouldn't be cornered into any awkward one-on-one conversations before everyone had settled. My folder, the same one I had shown Helena, was tucked neatly into my bag. It wasn't just paper anymore. It was armor. When I stepped through the sliding glass doors, the noise hit me first: laughter, clinking glasses, music floating from a speaker. People glanced up as I walked in, some smiling cautiously, others avoiding my eyes entirely. Zara was at the center of the patio, wearing a flowing yellow sundress and that practiced, easy grin she always wore when she wanted the room on her side. She spotted me instantly, and her expression flickered just for a second before she breezed over and hugged me as if nothing had happened. "You made it," she said brightly. "I was worried you'd skip." "I wouldn't miss it," I replied, my voice calm but firm. The afternoon rolled on, conversations weaving around me like I was a piece of furniture. I could hear Zara talking loudly about her new project, some vague business venture she claimed was going to change the game. My mother fluttered around refilling drinks, my father stuck to the grill, and the cousins gathered in tight clusters, whispering and glancing in my direction. It was almost a relief when my uncle clapped his hands together and said, "Let's all sit family toast." Chairs scraped against the patio floor, glasses were raised, and Zara stood, looking like she was about to deliver an Oscar acceptance speech. "I just want to say," she began, "how much I love everyone here. Family means everything to me. Even when times get tough, we stick together, right?" She gave me a pointed look, the kind that could have been mistaken for warmth if you didn't know her words. I let her have her moment, sipping my water while she went on about unity and forgiveness. Then, when she sat down, I placed my glass on the table and spoke up. "I agree," I said. "Family should stick together, but sticking together doesn't mean taking advantage of each other." The table went still. Zara tilted her head, the corners of her mouth tightening. "This again?" she asked, her voice sweet but lined with steel. "Yes," I said, "because it hasn't been resolved, and since we're all here, now's the perfect time to clear it up." I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder, laying it flat on the table. "This is the documentation of the $12,000 charge you made to my card without permission. This is the booking confirmation for the villa, the bank statement, and screenshots of your posts from that weekend. This is also the letter from my lawyer, which you ignored." A murmur ran through the table. My father shifted uncomfortably, my mother's face flushed. Zara laughed, short and sharp. "You're doing this here? Really?" "Yes," I said evenly. "Because I'm done with side conversations and half-truths. I'm done with being the only one who pays the price while everyone else keeps the vibe going." One of my aunts tried to interrupt, suggesting we talk privately, but I shook my head. "We've tried in private. It gets brushed under the rug. Not this time." Zara leaned back in her chair, folding her arms. "You know I don't have $12,000 just lying around. You seem to have money for designer dresses, rooftop bars, and vacations," I said, my tone sharper now. "This isn't about ability. It's about priority. And until you make it a priority to respect my boundaries, we have nothing to talk about except repayment." The silence was thick enough to taste. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. My father's eyes stayed on his plate. I could feel some relatives quietly aligning themselves in Zara's corner, ready to call me cold or dramatic. But there were also a few faces, Maya's among them, that looked almost relieved, like they'd been waiting for someone to break the pattern. Zara tried to laugh it off again. "You're really going to sue your own sister?" "I'm not suing my sister," I said. "I'm suing someone who stole from me." The fact that she's my sister makes it worse, not better. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the patio fan. Then Zara's smile cracked just slightly. She muttered something about me ruining everything and got up from the table, disappearing into the house. I stayed where I was, my folder still on the table. "This is my line," I said, to no one in particular, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "I've let too much slide for too long. I'm not doing it anymore. Not for Zara, not for anyone." The rest of the gathering was awkward, but it didn't matter. I didn't need reconciliation that day. I needed the truth out in the open, and it was. A month later, the court date was set. Zara didn't show up. The judge ruled in my favor, awarding me the full amount plus court costs. Collecting it took time. She tried to stall, tried to hide behind claims of being broke, but eventually, the payments started coming in. Small at first, then more regular once her wages were garnished. I didn't gloat. I didn't post about it online or parade the judgment around. I simply moved on. The first time I checked my bank account and saw one of her payments deposited automatically, I felt something shift inside me. Not joy, not vindication exactly, but peace. The family dynamic didn't magically heal. There were still relatives who thought I'd gone too far, still gatherings I wasn't invited to. But there was also a quietness in my life I hadn't known before. No more midnight calls asking for a little help, no more surprise charges. No more pretending that love meant sacrificing my stability for someone else's recklessness. One evening, months after it was all over, I sat by my apartment window with a cup of tea, watching the city lights flicker. I thought about that trip to Miami, about how one selfish decision had torn the last threads of something I'd been clinging to for years. But I also thought about how much stronger I felt now, how much more space there was in my life for things and people that actually respected me. Sometimes standing up for yourself doesn't bring applause. Sometimes it makes you the villain in someone else's story. But I'd rather be the villain in their story than the victim in mine. Moral lesson: boundaries are not cruelty. They are the bridges between respect and self-preservation, the silent declarations that say, I will not be diminished for your comfort. Family can be love, but love without respect becomes a chain, binding you to cycles that drain your spirit. Choosing yourself isn't betrayal. It's an act of courage that gives others permission to choose themselves too. Not everyone will understand your decision, and some may even resent it. But peace is real. Sustaining peace is worth more than forced harmony. If you're standing on the edge, wondering whether to draw that line, remember this: the cost of keeping it blurred is always higher than the cost of making it clear. Hello guys, thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you in any way, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this. And don't forget to leave a comment telling me your perspective or the lesson you've learned. I'd love to hear your thoughts.